it will. Well, actually, some of you may be liking snow like myself. So, quick updates for COVID. I'm sure you all were wondering what the hell is CDC doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? I don't have answers for you. I'm sorry. Okay. I do not respond to CDC. I have zero understanding why they basically saying if you're positive, quarantine for 24 hours. And if you feel better and if you have no fevers, you're welcome to go spread the COVID. I don't understand this. I'm sorry. I don't have answers. And I don't want to discuss this because it doesn't change my policy whatsoever, right? So I will still recommend everybody to isolate for 10 days from the moment you start having symptoms, or 5 days from the beginning if you fully have symptoms free by that point, or if you at 5 days still have mild symptoms but your test is negative, one of those three things. But I have a feeling that for whatever reason, the decision is political and not based on any science. I have been following some current debates. It does seem like we usually don't talk about politics, but I think that's okay to talk for a minute. It does seem like Biden is trying to repair a reputation of sort of mishandling the vaccine information and suppression of anything negative going about the vaccine. And this is kind of an attempt, I think, to potentially open up to public. I think it's very misguided. I think it's going to lead potentially to even further misunderstanding of what's going on. So for what it's worth, I disagree with CDC on this one. The second CDC update, it does look like that they're going to start to recommend every 6 months vaccinations versus every 12 months. There's been an article about this just recently. They haven't come out with this just yet, but the good news, it does seem like that the current boosters maintains very high efficacy against JN1, which is partially why I think they're recommending Q6 months for high risk category. And I don't know if I will change my recommendation for my patients. I'm going to wait a little to see what studies we're going to see. For now, I'm still maintaining Q12 months for high risk. And if you had 3 vaccines, the decisions, 2 vaccines and a booster, and then decision whether you should be getting a next one, if you're in less than 50 years old with no medical problems, gets quite complicated. So I'm not exactly sure what am I going to tell you in upcoming months, but we will keep covering that frequently. And then I have 2 non-COVID points to make. So the point number 1, I'm going to put Dr. Frame, since she's here, and I recently discussed an interesting point. Can the multivitamins improve cognition? Or rather, can they slow down the decline of cognition with age? I think that's a bit more of an appropriate statement. So I'm going to put our mini cast, I call it, or mini podcast in the link. So please feel free to check it out. Seems like it's gained a lot of popularity with just a couple of days since I posted it out. There's over 200 views already. It's a lot faster than my usual pickup on YouTube. So that's one thing. The second thing, Tai Chi in the big news, in a big way. And of course, just when I needed, I lost the link. But let me tell you about this first. I will definitely review this on my YouTube channel for sure. And as soon as I find the link when Dr. Frame starts talking, I'll post it. So it's in JAMA, open source, so you can read the whole article, basically saying that Tai Chi is significantly better than aerobic exercise for lowering blood pressure in pre-hypertensive patients, which I find quite positive result. It's a 7-point reduction on average in systolic blood pressure when it's less than 140. The data that treating hypertension with Tai Chi is much more efficient and much more effective than any existing medication has been pretty old. So that data has been around for about 10 years, and that's about 10 to 12-point reduction. But for patients with pre-hypertension, when blood pressure ranges from 128 to 140, having reduction of 7 points is very dramatic. There is no medication that can do that. That's a very big effect. What's even more interesting is that almost in a quarter of the entire population after 6 months patients reached completely normal blood pressure. That means the reduction was anywhere from 15 to 20 points. And what's very interesting is why is this a lot more effective than a regular exercise, regular walking, jogging, any aerobic exercise? I've read some ideas. The article is basically not trying to explain it, although they put some short hypothesis. I think it's something, oh, great, thanks, Jan. I think it has something to do with, there's a link in the chat if anybody wants to take a look while I'm talking about this. I think it has to do with two key points. So one is Tai Chi is one of few activities, maybe yoga is another one, when you're doing physical activity and you're actually balancing sympathetic and parasympathetic tone. Usually exercise is sympathetic stimulation. And then when you finish exercise, you shift into a nice balance with a predominant parasympathetic. Tai Chi is yoga, one of few things that actually presents more of a balanced pattern, that you're in the parasympathetic while you're exercising. But I think the bigger issue here is, I'm sure B, who I see is here, will subscribe to that point, that they're probably much more of an energetic effect. Anyone who's interested in and believes in Chinese medicine do know that the principle of how Chinese medicine operates is by moving a flow of energy, or qi, as they say. So I do believe that the actual main effect of not just blood pressure reduction, but any actually health improvement that you're looking at relates to that. So that's all I have for today in terms of updates. I think that's a little less than 10 minutes, perfect. And let's see if we have questions. Is the research showing that every 6 months would be beneficial? So yeah, I'm sure there is a research for that, Benita. The question is a little different. I think the question is, are the vaccines more beneficial at 6 months versus 12 months? And are they just as safe? And I think that's the key question that I don't have a good answer for. And I don't know if that's been done. This is, you can imagine that research like this will take several years, right? And maybe at least 6 months, right, for this comparison to occur. So this obviously would be delayed. And of course, with a new variant that's only been around for about 6 months, it's going to be very hard to achieve. How would this make sense when the uptake for this? Yeah, I don't have an answer to that one. So the current uptake among adults is 20% of entire population, in the US at 21. So it's a very low. It's a great question. So pushing for every 6 months when people haven't even done the third, meaning most populations, seems a bit daunting. And I agree with that. So how many times a week do you have? Okay, great. So they practice daily. They practice daily for 30 minutes, I think 6 days a week. And that seems to be the consensus. You need to get to probably about 3.5, 4 hours a week on an almost daily basis of praxis to harbor the most benefit of Tai Chi. Why? Because I think Tai Chi is a practice, and the timing put into it does make a lot of sense. I will tell you what doesn't make sense is to do it for an hour once a week. The data is very weak on that. The cutoff somewhere about 2 times a week. After that, when you go more than twice a week, you're beginning to have some long-term effect. But the belief is you probably should do minimum of 5 days, 30 minutes each time. So that is the rough estimate that I would recommend.
Okay, Dr. Kogan, I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, the Tai Chi I do it once a week. It takes only 6 minutes. So and I'm doing 37 rather than 24.
So you can do a couple of things. You can do the same form several times. You can also start learning longer forms. You can also combine things, which is, so today we're going to do Qigong, which I'll show you part of 8 brocades. When you're doing a full 8 brocades slowly, it's 20 to 25 minutes, depending how fast you breathe. So that could be the whole thing. Now, Qigong is less studied for the fact that it's not as much of moving. So there's not as much of balancing and isometric muscle exercise compared to Tai Chi. But still, if you ask any Chinese provider, they're basically going to tell you something along the line of Tai Chi and Qigong are very similar, but there's some key differences. Qigong is thought to be more energy work, and Tai Chi is a balance of energy work and the muscle activity or the whole body exercise. We're going to do Qigong for two reasons. One, I can't move here. I can't really walk around about my small house. So there's just not enough space. Plus, I assume a lot of you have the same problem. That's actually main reason. And the second, it just takes a lot of time to effectively do the Qigong is much easier to learn. Tai Chi requires weeks of learning, and it's not as easy. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there a difference between 24 and 37 for the blood pressure?
Say again?
Is there a difference between 24, there is Tai Chi 24 and Tai Chi 37?
No, they didn't describe that. The way the trial was set up, everybody was doing the same form, which is very typical. And the form itself, it's a time-based practice. So you may need to do the same form several times, or sometimes they would do more than one form, or they'll do some with different forms. But there's and frankly, I didn't read this to such a great detail to figure out exactly what they were doing. I just reviewed this today, so I will be preparing it for the, when I do the YouTube recording of the video to kind of, for the public, I'll probably discuss this a bit more. So
okay, thank you.
Stay tuned for that. I'll post the link when it's out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have a link to an online course for beginners? So I will put the practice we're going to do today. I will put the link for that. I don't recommend for you to try to study Tai Chi on your own without zero guidance. It's prone to mistakes because you're not going to effectively understand precision of movement. Why? Well, they're not that, they're easy once you master them. But until you master them, unfortunately, it appears easy, but you start doing it and you're realizing it's not so easy. You're going to potentially make some mistakes. Now, whether those mistakes make a difference, nobody fully understands. So it probably not. So it probably very forgiving. But generally for Tai Chi, I do recommend somebody starts with, with more of a guidance. So, but Qigong, no. So I'm going to put a couple of things in the link right now. So this is one article that I really like that explains step by step. And then I'm going to give you a link to one of my favorite Eight Brocades YouTube. Now, I will quickly give you a disclosure that what we will do today will be somewhat a bit different. But I don't want to take time from Dr. Frame because we're already a bit over a couple of minutes. So I think let's stop at this because I don't see any more questions. And we want to make sure Dr. Frame has enough time. Leigh, come on in.
Thank you very much, Misha. All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And for those of you who don't know me, I am the Executive Director of the Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, as well as the Director of the Graduate Programs. And my background is in nutrition science, like Janet said. And I was here a couple weeks ago, and Dr. Kogan was talking about the benefits of fasting on cognitive health. And there were some questions about how much, how long, how often. So I thought this would be the perfect follow-up to that. So today we're going to talk a little about fasting, how much and how often. First, when we think about fasting, most people think of calorie restricting. Let's eat less calories. And this is actually also what we think of when we think of dieting, right? That's basically the same thing. We want to have fewer calories. And the concept that you often hear quoted is eat less, move more. However, this approach is not successful for many people. It really overlooks kind of that long-standing relationship that human beings have had with fasting in general, in the fact that, we didn't used to have a grocery store or a McDonald's. We'd have to go find our food. And so there would be periods of time where we weren't eating. And that's kind of historically how our bodies were evolving. And so we're probably designed to have these periods of fasting. And let's talk a little bit Mediterranean style diet. I've talked before about how that's one of the best ways of eating. It's a type of dietary pattern where you eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of minimally processed food, olive oil, things like that. And it seems to be one of the best diets. But what's really interesting is if you talk about a Mediterranean style diet or dietary pattern, it's really hard to take fasting out of that, because if you look at every culture around the Mediterranean, they all have periods of fasting. So is it perhaps that fasting is part of the reason that a Mediterranean style dietary pattern is so beneficial? It's certainly contributing. And so it's something that to really consider, is this something we should be doing? I'm going to say the answer is yes. And if not the only reason, that you actually cannot fully rest, you can't get restorative sleep while you're actually digesting. And so an overnight fast is really important. And so if we only talk about anything when we think about fasting, it's that overnight fasting, giving your body time to really rest and recover, restore. You get deep sleep. What happens? Your brain is actually cleaning itself. And that's part of the reason we see some of these cognitive benefits when we have improved sleep, and perhaps related to fasting as well. And Dr. Kogan talked about how the type of fuel makes a difference. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a hack for that, or maybe you don't even need to think so much about the type of fuel. We just think about when we're eating. So a bit of an introduction to the different types of fasting. So we've got chronic energy restriction. That's the typical dieting where you're eating kind of a moderate to low amount of calories every single day. But you're eating every single day, having 3 meals a day, perhaps, something like that. Then we've got intermittent fasting, or sometimes there's different terminology for this called pulse fasting or alternate day fasting, where you're having kind of your full energy intake on one day, and then the next day you're having either no calories or very low calories, 500 calories or maybe 1,000 calories, and you just alternate back between those. So you're eating it one day, then you're not, or you're kind of not eating much the next day, and you just alternate back between them. So that would be a type of intermittent fasting. And the third way of thinking about fasting, and this is the one that I get excited about, is time-restricted eating. So there's actually no restriction on the amount of food that you're eating. You can eat as much as you feel comfortable eating, with the caveat that you have to listen to your body. And you do that every single day, and you can still have 3 meals a day, but you're limiting the time window that you're eating in. So you're only eating in certain hours of the day. Down here to our little piece about that. So time restriction, what is happening here is you're alternating between periods of fasting where there's no food or significant calorie reduction to periods of unrestricted eating, but you're just doing that within a single day. So with intermittent fasting, you could do either fast day, fast every other day. That's your alternate day fasting. There's the 5-2 or 5 days a week that you are actually eating kind of ad libitum, whatever your body is telling you it needs. And then 2 days a week, you're fasting. But those are still looking at on a day-to-day basis. Time-restricted eating is within every single day. You're fasting for a period of time. It could be for 10 hours, it could be 16 hours, 14 hours, and we'll talk a little bit about what perhaps the right amount of hours are as well. But first, just why are we even talking about this, other than the cognitive health that Dr. Kogan talked about? Why do we care about this time-restricted eating or fasting? And the reason is because it actually increases our health span. So if you have normal aging, right, you've got this black line, there's a period of time where you start to decline and you're not very healthy. And what happens when we add these fasting in is it moves this line out where you have more years that you are healthy, and then your decline is much faster. That's what we all really want, right? We want to be able to live a long, healthy life and then just be gone, at a reasonable age. And that's the idea, is that these are really promoting more of the health span rather than just the number of years. It's the quality of those years. And I will have this handout for all of you. So what else do we need to know about time-restricted eating? So there's been a ton of studies on this, and this one I thought was a really good example. So this was a study in people who have metabolic syndrome. And in people who have metabolic syndrome, they have an increased waist circumference. Their blood pressure is often high, typically a high blood glucose, blood sugar. Their triglycerides and HDL are high, so their blood lipids are out of control. And what they did is they didn't change anything about their medications, but they just introduced this time-restricted eating, where they had 10 hours they were allowed to eat and 14 hours that they were fasting. And all of that is overnight. So a lot of that you're actually sleeping for it. So you don't really notice the 14 hours quite so much. And what did they find in this group? Well, they saw a decreased body weight, a decreased waist circumference, decreased blood pressure, decreased LDL, decreased non-HDL cholesterol. A little confusing. decreased hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of your blood sugar control. And here's the big one, increased restful sleep. And that's all they did with these people. They didn't counsel them on diet, lifestyle, anything. All they did was tell them, okay, instead of doing what you're doing now, only eat within a 10-hour window. And they saw all of these benefits. And that's one of the things people seem to really like about time-restricted eating is it kind of makes it easy. You don't have to count calories. You don't have to pay too much attention like you would for something else. You just listen to your body, eat mostly minimally processed foods, as many whole plants as you can, and you do it in that 10-hour window and you see a lot of benefits. But how do you actually implement this, right? This is all well and good, but how do you do this in the real world? So what I would say is first to start gradually. You know, you don't want to desperately do this overnight. Let's say you currently eat for 14 hours a day, slowly decrease that maybe by 30 minutes at a time. And even if you can get down to a 12-hour fast, so that would be a 12-hour eating window, that may actually be beneficial. So that's a good goal. And if you can't get beyond that, don't stress yourself out because stress is not great either. But ideally, we'd like you to aim for a 14-hour overnight fast, which means you have 10 hours to eat, just like in this study, right? So 10 hours to eat, 14 hours that you're not eating. And what that's doing is that's allowing during those 14 hours for your body to finish digesting. And it actually switches the fuel sources, like what Dr. Kogan was talking about with cognition. So it goes from burning carbohydrates to burning ketones. So we hear a lot about the ketogenic diet, and many of the benefits of the ketogenic diet can actually be achieved through this 14-hour overnight fast. So you don't have to be in ketosis chronically to have benefits. And actually, those chronic ketosis could be potentially detrimental in many ways. But if you have this overnight fast, you are hitting ketosis every single night. You're giving your body a chance to rest and stop digesting things. You're giving your brain a chance to clean itself out and improve cognition. And what do these eating hours look like? So does this fit into your life? So here's some examples of how you could be doing it. You could do a 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., an 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., a 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. This is the one I do here, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., sometimes a little bit earlier or a little bit late. I'm not super rigid with it. And then you could do up to 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the reason I stopped there is because ideally you want to stop eating at least 3 hours before bed. That sounds like a lot, but right, it takes time for your body to digest, and you want to make sure you fully digested before you go to sleep. Now, if you can do for 2 hours, that's great. 3 is really the goal. It's ideal, but giving yourself at least 2 hours to get that digested mostly done before you go to sleep is really important. And actually, one of the main benefits of this is making sure you're not having that food digesting as you're sleeping. So this part is kind of needs to go hand in hand with a time restricted eating. This may go without saying, but no snacking in the middle of the night. If you get up in the middle of the night and you're hungry, well, one, you're probably not hungry. You're probably thirsty. Your body often triggers hunger when we're thirsty because we actually do get a lot of our water from food. So try having some water and really try to avoid eating in the middle of the night. If you still feel hungry after that, have something that is very, very low in calories and carbohydrates. Like, for instance, some cucumbers would be great. They're hydrating, very low calories, very low carbohydrates. Your body almost won't see it like food and will have very minimal digestion. That'll allow you to get back to sleep and hopefully get that restorative sleep that you need. All right, here's my last point here. So what does this really look like? So this is one example. This one's an 8-hour window of eating, which, there's a lot of people that are saying this could potentially be even more beneficial. But there's a lot of literature that just says 14 hours seems to be enough to start getting the benefits. So if you are fasting for 14 hours, you're having that 10-hour eating window, you're really doing great. But what happens is that in that fasting window, you're having water. You could have tea or coffee, just don't add things that have calories in them, like milk or sugar. So it's not like you can't have anything. You can still have some things, and sometimes some herbal tea can be quite satisfying just to give you something, sort of delicious to enjoy. And then during your eating window, have at it and enjoy all the things you want to enjoy, in moderation, and really savor them. Then when you get to that other end of the window, you really want to stop here. So before bed, obviously you're not having tea or coffee because they're caffeinated. You could have some herbal tea, but you do want to limit the amount of liquids you have immediately before bed because they can wake you up in the middle of the night because you have to pee. So you do want to kind of moderate your liquid intake here in that end of that fasting window. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I see there are some questions in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all your faces and look at the questions. So one question is, would having herbal tea at night or early morning break your fast? Well, I guess I answered that one already. No, it does not break your fast. And so we're sort of expanding on that. There are a lot of studies that show actually, as long as you keep anything under 500 calories first thing in the morning, your body is still somewhat in a fasting state. So that could be a good way to start moving in this direction, right? Having either a small bar or something kind of light, that particularly that's high in fiber but lower in carbohydrates, so like not a refined carbohydrate, could kind of tide you over and start moving you in the direction of having that fast. Whereas maybe, just having coffee in the morning isn't going to be okay, right? Your stomach's going to rumble because you're so used to that. Maybe you eat, a lot of people eat when they first get up, 6 a.m. And that's just kind of their habit. So it could take a little bit of time to get used to that. And having very low amounts of calories in the morning could be a great way to start training your body. Okay, we got a follow-up to Al's question about herbal tea. Herbal tea enriched with honey. So this kind of goes to my comment there about number of calories. We don't have an exact number of what starts changing your metabolism, but a very small amount of honey in your tea is probably not going to do it. Keep it to maybe a very scant teaspoon, and I think you're going to be all right. It's not going to throw off your metabolism. The one thing I will add, though, is caffeine has been shown to really shift your metabolism. So having a lot of caffeine in the morning may not be a good idea. It's not a good idea for a lot of reasons, right? You want to limit the amount of caffeine that you have. You want to have a moderate caffeine intake. So if you're having like 4 cups of coffee in the morning, that may not be the best thing, especially if you're fasting. It could actually do kind of the opposite of what Dr. Kogan was saying and shift you into more of that stress response. And we want to make sure you aren't, spiking your cortisol levels, and large amounts of caffeine can do that. So Al was talking about how having the herbal tea at night or early in the morning, sometimes it helps him fall asleep and also helps with regularity. I also really enjoy a cup of herbal tea before bed. It can be a nice routine, a wind down routine or ritual that could actually help your body know, okay, we're moving towards bed. It's time to relax and get ready to sleep. So I'm very supportive of that concept. And he found that your fasting limit is 16 hours. Anything after that, you start to feel bad. And that's actually great that you know that. You've listened to your body, and your body says, nope, that's not going to work for me. And that's the number one rule because everyone's a little bit different. Some people are more sensitive to this than others, and it will also change over time. So as you get used to it, it'll get a little easier. But then also sometimes as people get older, it's a little bit harder for them to do this. And maybe they have to switch from a 16-hour to a 14-hour, or from a 14-hour to a 12-hour fast, because it's a little too long for their bodies. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, even if you can get to the 12 hours of fasting, you are probably getting some benefit. It's just not quite the extent that you would see with a 14 or a 16-hour fast. So with that, should we go to Qigong?
I think so.
So yes, and that handout will go out in the email, so everyone will have the presentation that I used. And it's got links in there to the articles too, so you can read them.
Oh, there's me.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that. How's my sound?
Sound
Can
good?
you guys see me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
I'm sound good. Okay. Let me just get this a little bit. Okay, how about now? Okay. Okay, well, I hope you can hear me and see me.
All good.
I think I'm going to, for some reason, I only can hear in one ear, but that's okay. So I do invite you to, if you're gonna stand up, make sure that you don't have something very close to you, unfortunately. I am restricted by the space we have. And so because of that, there will be a little bit of a tight space for me, but you can do this practice in a relatively narrow space, and don't that you kind of can have more or less the circle that you're not having anything to you touching. First, by making sure we're comfortable. If you're sitting, you can totally do the whole practice seated. In fact, I have a chair right here, so I can show you how you can do that. So you would simply do exactly what we're gonna do standing by doing it sitting. So the first practice will be reaching out, hand up, and then exhaling, gradually bringing the interlocked fingers, hands down, almost touching the crown, and then inhaling up. So we're gonna get up and do it standing. We're not gonna be able to do a whole sequence. We'll do a half of the sequence today. So the inhale, and then when you're exhaling and relaxing, you're bending your knees just a little bit, and then inhaling, look up, stretch, and exhale, bring the hands back down, and again, inhale up, stretch, and exhale down. Continue doing this. It's standard routine to do each portion of it 8 times. And exhale. Inhale up. And exhale down. If you're losing count, don't worry about it. Just approximate how many you've done. Find a natural completion for each movement and finish. When we're finishing, there are a couple of different things. You can move right through, which is inhale, gather energy, bring it down, breathe, inhale, exhale. And one more time. If you're noticing you're getting warm, or you're feeling kind of tingling in the hands, face, fingers, that's sort of an expected effect. It's okay. You'll probably eventually you'll warm up and you may feel some of the energy moves. So the next one, we're bringing the hands to the level of the chest. The right hand's going to go up, and it's going to be in this kind of position facing the opposite direction. And this and fingers going to face forward. It's going to look symmetrical. So same stretch a little bit, make it don't overstretch. You leaning to just enough to stretch. And then once you relax, you bring the second. So let's begin. Inhale up, stretch, and exhale down. Inhale up, stretch, exhale, bring back to the neutral. So this is one cycle. Continue, inhale, exhale. Make sure when you're exhaling that you're lowering your body just a little bit. I'm bending knees even more, but knees are never completely straight, so they're always slightly bent. And also your pelvis is slightly tacked forward. I forgot to show this. Actually, let me pause here for a second so I can show you this. So the pelvis is tacked just a little, just a couple of degrees, so that your back gets slightly straighter. So there's no curl, typical lumbar. A little bit. Continue about halfway through. And exhale. Inhale. And if you're doing this seated, when you're leaning it perfectly down because the chair will be in the way, but that's okay. If your forward hand may be just slightly in front. All these variations are acceptable. When you're going to be watching YouTube videos I sent, you will see a pretty significant amount of variability. When the actual Qigong teachers are doing this, there's a little bit of variability between the teachers, but also there's variability between different styles. So each Qigong style will have some version of 8 brocades. And the usual type of Qigong or Tai Chi called Wudang, which is what I've been learning for many years. And it's not something that's most common. But if you're doing a slightly different variation that you've learned, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so the next one, if you're seated, still open up legs a little wider, but not maybe as wide as what I'm gonna do, but I'm not gonna do it actually as wide as I usually would do it, just so that you can copy me. And a point being here is if you get tiring, if the legs are tiring, just straighten them a little bit. Make sure you're not straightening them fully. They have to, the knees still need to be bent. If you have a good core strength of your legs, sit a little bit lower. So this one, we begin kind of similar to the second one, except that the right hand here is going to be a string of a bow, or the hand that's going to pull the air to this side, and this would be the bow. And so we're going to inhale, open our chest, stretch, and then exhale and release the bow, and then go to the other side. Inhale, make sure you're turning your head all the way, and exhaling. So this is obviously bow and arrow. And the first 3 are actually all geared towards stretching the spine and also stretching the lungs, opening the chest, making sure that the breath has better movement, that the lungs are more open. Obviously, in this time of the year, when we have all kinds of infections, this is very, very important. And you can inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose, so you can inhale through the nose as exhale through the mouth. Both are options, okay. Let's do 2 more. Routinely, when I do it myself, I would do it a bit slower according to my breath, but now I'm talking, so I have to follow my breath. So it's a little bit faster probably. And last time. And release and slowly bring feet back. Shake the feet just for a little bit if you were feeling them a little tired. Okay. So the next one, and this would be the last one for today. Actually, I don't know the time, so I don't know where we are. Janet, can you enlighten me? Timing wise, so somebody can let me know.
2:42.
Ah, we're actually doing quite well. So we're doing them a lot faster, I think, because we're already on number 4. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep going. So we'll probably do a whole sequence. We'll just do it a little bit faster. As I said, the whole sequence usually takes about up to 25. So we're probably doing it a bit on a faster pace towards 15 minutes maybe. So we'll keep going. So the next one here, our feet are a little bit, they're not as close as in the first 2, but they're not as wide as in the third. So it's just about shoulder width, a little bit wider.
Yeah.
So here we Let's make sure everybody's muted. So here in this one, we start with this position as if we're going to punch. And actually, we are going to punch. We're just not going to punch fast. We're going to punch slow. So we're going to inhale. Then we're going to exhale. We're going to, with a slightly closed fist, but not with a force. We're going to imagine an energetic punch. But then when you finish the punch, you can do this movement of grabbing the energy in front of you and then bringing it into the dantian, into this point right below your belly button. And that's the first move. So then we're going to do it on this side. So exhale, inhale, bring, and then 2 times to this side. First to the right, and then to the left. And this is a 1 movement. So let's continue. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, turn, head, exhale, inhale. Typically at this point, you may feel beginning of kind of a funny sensations. Movement. This is in the flow of things. This one is probably energetically most easy to attune to, just by the nature, since we are not doing any complex movements, and also there's a literal grab of energy here at the end. Grab energy, bring it back, and then exhale. Grab, bring in. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Make sure the knees are bent slightly. And also make sure that at no point your fists are tight. Everything is loose. Even the grab of the energy is very relaxed and loose. You're not holding on to anything. If you feel you need to slow down, I'm realizing I'm doing it definitely faster than my usual pace. If you need to slow down, and once you master the basic movement, please go ahead and do your own pace. Let's do 2 more cycles. So this is 1. And this is the last cycle. And lost movement. Back. Let's actually, this was quite moving for me, so I'm going to close this for myself 3 times. I don't have to do this, but sometimes if you feel a lot of energy movement in a particular portion, it's very good to rebalance. So 3 times. And we'll continue for the next one. So next one, we're maintaining a pretty narrow position, just about shoulder weight. So this one, we're going to inhale up, reach all the way, and you're going to, you don't really see my toes, but if you can, you're going to reach out on your toes. Then you're going to exhale, lower your hands, come down all the way, feel wherever you feel. Pause here just for a second, and then begin inhaling, brushing the sides of your body, and then continuing inhaling up. So then your end stretching all the way, and then begin descending down. So obviously this is Great for the spine. Great for the balance, to be able to balance on the tiptoes. If you're seated, that's fine. Just balance seated on tiptoes. And you still be able to stretch your spine both way up and down. And then the energetic point here is you're kind of bringing energy from the earth all the way up into the clouds, into the sky, holding it up there, holding the clouds, and then exhaling and balancing it with the earth. So this is, each practice has a very deep esoteric meaning, energetic meaning, which of course I'm not able to give it to you because I'm not at that level myself. So if you ever get excited about this, we have professional teachers in our crowd. Maybe at some point, lead us, and also we had several other people who were teaching us who are a bit more doing this full time. But nonetheless, I think whatever the depth of this you're touching, it's going to be beneficial, even if it's just purely physiologic and you're not even trying to tap into energy aspect of this. If you need to take layers off, please do so. It's very typical, despite very gentle nature of this movement, that you may feel quite warm, which I'm definitely feeling. Let's do last one. Inhale up and exhale down. And inhale up. Come here. So the next one is a bit more, probably the most difficult one in this series. So we're pretty wide. Our hands go not on the waist, just under, just kind of right over the hips. And this one, we're going to inhale to the left first, exhale to the middle. Then we're going to inhale, rotate all the way. And we're going to go all the way down. And I'll tell you in a second what the breath here, how the breath works. So when you inhale first, then you exhale back, and then you inhale, and you inhale halfway through. And then when you reach this point, you begin to exhale. So the movement is slow. And then you exhale, 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 and you come back. And then we go to the other side. So inhale, exhale. Make sure your knees are not locked. Inhale, 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 and then exhale, 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 exhale. Come back, and we're starting again. Inhale, exhale, inhale. And this one is great for the spine, for the hips, for the kidneys, for adrenals. So this is a very broad exercise, and also for the abdomen. And we actually messed up the sequence, which I sometimes do, which is not a big deal at all. Before this one, we had to do just the head exercise. There is a neck stretch / head movements, which is very good for vestibular system and also for just the flexibility of the upper spine. Inhale, exhale, inhale, and exhale down. Inhale, inhale, halfway, begin to exhale. If you're seated, when you're doing this movement, you will be having a hard time going backwards, which is fine. You don't actually have to go backwards at all if you have a support back of the chair. You're just going to basically do this without leaning back at all. Just lean forward, stretch all the way down. And going all the way down is not critical. You go down to whatever's comfortable. As you can see, I'm reasonably inflexible, so I don't go even halfway down. If you're much more flexible, be my guest and go further down if it feels like, if you feel comfortable doing that. Make sure you feel the stretch in the hips. That's probably the critical aspect of this part. Okay. So let's do full cycle more. So we're finishing one, and then we'll do one full more. So starting with the left, inhale, exhale, and inhale, exhale, and the last one. Okay. Okay. Come back, shake your feet. It's good if you feel feet are tired, especially at the upper part of the quads, which they should have done it right. This one, hands are relaxed. You don't have them anywhere. You're a bit more narrow, even a little bit more narrow than prior one. And so here, starting with the left, we just inhale to the left, exhale to the back into the middle, to the right. Then up. Here you have to be very careful. You have to go up, but only that is comfortable. Make sure you don't overstretch back. If you have, especially if you have a inhale and exhale, and this is one cycle. So continue. Inhale to the middle. Inhale, exhale. Inhale up, exhale down, and inhale down. A little bit unusual, and then exhale up. Usually we open up when we inhale here. We close it. It's okay. Make sure you don't beyond the limit of comfort. If you feel any aching at the turn, you're going too far. You need to feel just enough stretch that it feels good, that the neck is fully mobilized, but not to the point where you may be feeling any kind of pain or discomfort. This applies to the going down too, by the way. Check in with your legs. Make sure your knees are unlocked. We always keep eyes open. We never close them. And it's best not to focus in a very close objects. I know it's difficult to do if you're in a small room. Try to unfocus your eyes in that case and imagine that you're looking somewhere about maybe 15, 30 feet away. If you have a wall that's about that distance, you can kind of just, without focusing on any particular location, imagine looking at it. We'll do 2 more cycles. This one. And the last one. Okay, so this there are 2 more left. One is not actually the full cycle. It is activating of the kidneys. So we'll do that first, actually. So you put your hands right here. It's a great for both kidney energy or kidney in Chinese medicine is really important. That's where the longevity sits. That's where kind of the energy you're born with, and then you can cultivate it to continuously support it through the lifespan. It has nothing to do, by the way, with kidneys the way we think of a water excretion. But we have adrenals on top of the kidneys, and that does apply. The adrenals indeed make cortisol. Think of that as a kind of an energy factor in the body. Tap very gently, either separate like this or together. Okay. So then you just kind of hold just for a second before we do the last. The last is fascinating. And I'm actually going to see if I can get you to see my feet. Okay, good. So this one, and I hope you don't have neighbors underneath. If they do, you will have to apologize to them. This one is called riding a horse. So we extend our hands forward without, just soft, very soft hands. You're not grabbing anything, you're just relaxing the hands. You're gonna come up on your toes slightly and you're gonna drop. That's the whole exercise. And you're gonna repeatedly do this with the sequence. And you're breathing regularly. You're doing this for about 60 seconds. And this is, if you were to be a barefoot, you would actually, you keep doing this, or we'll remove the shoes. It's best to do this part without shoes, because you wanna feel the drop. You wanna feel that your foot is fully stimulated. You can speed up a little bit if you feel like. Okay. And let's finish up with balancing breath. Inhale up. Bring energy together. Exhale slowly. Wash your body with energy. Inhale up. Exhale down. And one more time. And right before you end, put your hands, doesn't matter which side which, right over the belly. I'm just gonna hold it for 30 seconds or so. A couple of breaths. Well, thank you, everybody. I am going to pass it on to Janet to tell us who we have next week, and I will not be here. I'm taking a little vacation. I'll see everybody in 2 weeks on March 1st, and wishing everybody well.
Okay, so next week we will have with us PA Ashley Drapeau, who is with the GW Resiliency Well-being Center and with the GW Center for Integrative Medicine. She will be accompanied by Amin Abdi, who is the founder of Stress Free Zone and a certified heart math practitioner. So if you enjoyed the heart math that we've done with Dr. Kogan, you'll enjoy it with Amin as well. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.